Hello, welcome to We're Talking About Stuff podcast. My name is Michael,
And I'm Leila.
and we're talking about stuff.
Yes.
Yay. We're talking about our biggest financial mistakes.
Mhm. Quite a few. Quite a
Mine,
few between the two of us.
mine feels like a yes or no answer. Like biggest financial mistakes? Yes.
Yes. But getting better, always
Yeah.
improving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you want to start?
Sure, sure. I guess we'll kind of just switch back and forth. But yeah, love to hear your thoughts or like if I think some of these things will overlap too. So for me, I'm gonna go in order of my mistakes, like in my lifetime. So the first for me would be starting my teenage years. I was working, I started my first job when I was 16, but and I worked every year after that, but I don't know, I don't have any of that money. Like for years, I didn't save anything. And I wish even I saved like 2% of my income and I would be so much further, like or invested it or something. But I literally would get my paychecks, spend the money. Sometimes it was on necessary items. Usually it wasn't like clothes, workout clothes, whatever. Yeah, so I would not save. I would just spend, 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 spend. And I have nothing to show for all those years of working.
I love I love I think this is probably both of our takes on each other. Because
Hmm.
my first response to it is like, yeah, but look what you did now. Like
Yeah. But imagine if I saved or invested at, I mean, that's for anybody. Like if you started saving and investing at 18, 19, even if it was just, $5 a month, like that would be pretty impactful just because our money goes so much further when you're that young.
yeah, and it builds, it has the opportunity to keep growing and growing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, luckily I changed my habits around spending and I feel like I wouldn't say I had a shopping addiction or anything. It was just spending was fun to me, shopping was fun to me. And I built these habits of like, oh, if I'm feeling sad, I'll go shopping. If I'm bored, I'll go shopping. And that continued on for a number of years. Luckily, I did break that habit and I don't feel that way now. Like I don't enjoy shopping. There's some things online, it's fine for certain things, but going to the store, like the mall or anywhere and doing shopping, not fun. I hate it. I'm
I
like,
hate it so much.
yeah,
Uh,
it's overwhelming. Like there's just too much crap and
yeah.
yeah.
And it feels like such a like I think I'm worse about this after COVID than I used to
Hmm.
be. But I'm like, oh, I'm leaving the house for this. Like
Right.
I only want to leave the house for like actual things, not roaming
Yeah.
around the store, just looking at stuff.
I agree. It is, I think online shopping is much better, but yeah, I'm much more in control of that now. And
Yeah.
I wish I did save, but yeah, I think now it's much better. But in hindsight, looking back, big
Yeah.
mistake of mine, especially because I knew better too, like my parents didn't really teach me, they did not teach me about finances, but I know my dad would say like, oh, save just in passing type of thing,
Yeah.
but I didn't do that.
Yeah. I think that's um I feel like that's I'm changing mine as as we go because we were
Uh-huh.
talking about this before we started recording. I'm having a really hard time like pinpointing actual things.
Hmm.
And I think I mean I feel like I have so many more like kind of experience kind of like I don't know how to explain it. Like things just the way I looked at money was the issue more than and that's the thing that prevented me from saving. Like I think when I look especially now at 55 and barely anything saved for retirement, like look, I'm like I don't even know how much it is now. But it's a thousand, it's a few thousand. What is it?
Hmm.
3,000, 4,000, something like that.
Hmm.
Way better than before, but not nearly enough. I mean, so I mean, clearly not saving is a mistake. And I feel like that I almost want to retype my things right now. So yeah, but I think of all the times that I would try to save. Like I'd be like, I'm putting $50 in this savings account and I'm not going to touch it.
Hmm.
But everything else was such a mess in my finances that I always had to touch it because I didn't have anything else worked out.
Hmm.
So I think that's why and maybe I'm overthinking all of it, that I'm like, oh, which one is the mistake? Not saving or not figuring out how to have like a solid financial like day-to-day system. And I still don't know.
They go together, I would say, because I know even at the beginning of my journey, when I was working on saving, I would save up and then something would come up. That always happened. It always happened at the beginning. Like I would get to $1,000 or $2,000, and then I had like a root canal or um the car situation, which we'll talk about. Like I would
Yeah.
save up and something would always come up and deplete it. But it just took years and years of consistently saving to be like, okay, now I'm good. If something pops up, I'm not, back to zero.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I I worry that what I'm about to say is taking us to to a different topic.
Uh,
Throw it out anyway. Like when I look at right now, like when I look at every month when we do this financial, like kind of look at the entire month, and there's still money in my savings account, sometimes I'm like, okay, how did this happen? Like I
yeah,
used to be able to do that. And I
it's
guess,
great.
yeah, I mean, having, because I think, I mentioned like I would put $50 in a savings account. And that's the thing, like you were saying your dad does, like, oh, just save money. And I would
Hmm.
hear people say, oh, yeah, just put an automatic transfer into your savings account. There you go, you're
Hmm.
saving. But there's another piece to that. And that is not, is having things, the rest of your financial life in order enough so that you don't have to touch it.
Hmm.
Um, and that's a bigger piece. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think even making enough money too, a lot of times, like when I was in college, I really struggled because I was going to school full time and I lived in the dorm, so I lived on campus and I moved out of the house by the time I lived on campus my first 2 years of college and then I moved out with my sister at the age of 19. So I was fairly independent from a young age, and that costs a lot more money, like versus staying at
Mhm.
home with parents. And I know that that's a life choice, but that's the choice that I made. But when I lived in the dorms and going to school full time, I would pay for my groceries. I didn't have like a meal plan or anything like that. And I was making like 7.25 an hour working maybe 1 or 2 days a week. And that would be like $50 per week in money. And I would have to buy groceries. So it's like, I literally cannot save. So there were some times where, yeah, I was spending unnecessarily, but other times it was like, I have to buy groceries. Now all my money's gone. I have to start over. So I
Yeah.
think income is a big, just depending on where you're at in the journey. But
Yeah.
that was a big part too. I didn't make that much money.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like the jury's still out on what my first mistake is.
Yeah. Say them both then.
Well, I think, look, I'm rewriting as we go. So my first one is believing that I was destined to be broke
Hmm.
because that stopped me from trying not to be. I think like all the way, and it has to do with being a musician, I think. And like, I think that's where like all the way through high school, I was kind of like, well, music is good as a hobby, but you need a real job, basically, is what
Hmm.
I had a parent say a lot. So I kind of like took me a while to decide, like, no, I'm really going to do music. But I feel like at that time I was like, so that means you're going to be poor. And I didn't really try not to be. And I had this belief so strong that I just didn't really, when people would talk about retirement or something like that, I don't think that I know I would be like, oh, yeah, that's not what people like me do. Like,
Hmm.
you don't, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Mm.
So I think kind of taking on that belief was a big mistake. I don't think I
Yeah.
knew how not to, but it really like set the stage for like countless mistakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think you use that as an, an excuse to make the financial decisions that you made?
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think I really lived in like a victim mentality for a long time. This sounds really, I'm not really beating myself up. I think I really look back at this like, how did this happen? Because it's really a mess. I mean, it's getting better and all that kind of thing, but I think there was this like, well, I'm a musician and I grew up in I went to high school in East Texas, with like a homophobic area, so I had to hide who I was, all these kind of things, which were like actual challenges, but that wasn't the end of the story, and it felt like it was.
Hmm.
Yeah. So is that,
Yeah.
I think that's where I get like when we're talking about these mistakes, I think yeah, that's the biggest one, just believing just was meant to be broke.
I honestly think people don't, they often don't break out of that. Like that's something that is a lifelong belief for a lot of people at the
Yeah.
same time, like that's, they just, I know when I was younger, I thought being rich was like reserved for rich people. I don't know. And I talk about this sometimes on I've mentioned it several times on my finance channel, but I would see really expensive cars on like the highway. I'd be sitting in the back seat and I'm like, oh, they're rich. Like I'll never be rich like that. Now looking, I can see that just because you drive a fancy car, number one, doesn't mean you're rich, but also that's not true. Like we can all be wealthy. It just, we have to put an effort to that. But I think a lot of people stay stuck in that or feel like money is a bad thing. So,
Hmm. I'm glad because I was going to ask that because I think I had that same feeling, and also like, and I'm morally superior to those people because I
mm,
don't only think about money. Like, obviously, that person with that car, I know this isn't real. Um, they only think about money,
hmm.
but I'm creative and I have this and that. Like, I'm more into like, it's that like, I mean, and I'm saying this knowing that this isn't true. I'm
Hmm.
just kind of like restating how I would think. But I thought, even though it sucked so bad to be always struggling with money, there was a certain part of me that felt like it was kind of romantic in a way.
Yeah,
Made me like, oh, I just am not that kind of person that cares about that stuff.
that's interesting. Yeah.
But I
I
could
think,
both of those things.
yeah, this is going to take us on a different, it's not going to be financial mistakes. And maybe we could make a whole different episode on this, but I'm fine with people that are wealthy. Obviously, that's where I would like to be. Like, I would be cool with being a millionaire sooner rather than later, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but there's sometimes where you see people who have a lot of money and they're doing things and it's like that is not right. But then it's like it's their money. They get to do what they want with it.
Hmm.
But I think the extremes, like I'm thinking specifically Elon Musk, who at this point, especially at this time,
Hmm.
when we're talking about this, like I completely disrespect him as a person. Like I do not have respect for him, is what I'm saying, and his wealth. Like I think having that much wealth for one person shouldn't be allowed. I don't know. Like I don't know where the line is drawn on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a different topic, but
I know it's a really hard thing. It seems like I'm hearing some hesitation in your voice. Look, I'm hearing some hesitation in your voice that, and I think I have the same hesitation of like, he's so rich, just obscenely rich. He has way
hmm,
more money than he could ever imagine needing.
yeah.
But then when do we tell people they can't do that? Like,
Hmm.
where's the cutoff and why? I don't
Yeah.
think anyone should be that rich. But then I start thinking like, but how do we decide?
Yeah. Like he worked for it. That's how
Yeah.
whatever he did, that's how he got there. I think the problem comes in when it's like money makes you powerful. And obviously we can see that with Elon Musk and everything that's happening. And really can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So, but versus like if I had that much money, I probably wouldn't have that. Like Dolly Parton, for example, her net worth is like always lower from my understanding. I don't know if this is true. This is what I've heard. But
Yeah.
because she donates her money and gives her money so often,
Yeah.
she has a lower net worth compared to what she could have because of that. And it's almost like you don't have to do anything with your money, but being wealthy, it's almost like you should do those things. That's how I sometimes think of
Yeah.
it, but that's not true. So yeah, that's it's hard to even think of where the line I have no clue.
Yeah, and any of the things I think of, I realize as I think them like, you don't know how that works. Like
Right.
partly I want to say really enforce laws that prevent people from being able to take advantage of the financial system
Yes.
to
Hmm.
the degree that they have so many billions of dollars. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like that's the kind of thing that would make the kind of changes. But again, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyways, back to our mistakes.
Yeah.
Is that kind of your the first one
Yeah, I think
wrapped up there?
yeah, the first one is believing I was meant to be broke.
Okay. So my second mistake was taking out life insurance or opening a life insurance policy. Another thing I've talked about many times on my finance channel. When I was probably 21, maybe even 20, I went to my dad and I was like, I want to start investing. And my dad he's an immigrant. He comes from the Middle East. He came here when he was like 20 or so. So his financial education is it's not that grand, you know. But he always had a financial advisor and he would like come to the house and stuff. And I knew this man growing up. Like he would always be at the house every few months or so talking about finances with my dad. But this financial advisor was specifically a life insurance advisor. So I trusted this man. I also trusted my dad, and my dad was like, oh, "Okay, we'll get you set up with this guy, and start investing."
Hmm.
It was a life insurance policy. Being 20 years old, no children, you don't need a life insurance policy. Um, so I thought I was investing. I was really excited about it. And I remember even like meeting with this guy, opening the whole policy. He was explaining it to me and I could not understand it. Like it's something I still to this day I can't wrap my head around how it works. And he would explain it to me. And I'm like, okay, like you're the expert. Fine, that's great. I'll start investing. So at first, I think I was putting in. I had like a $500,000 policy, life insurance policy. If I were to die, that money would go to my sister, which she doesn't need 500K, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was putting in it was like 100 something initially each month, which is quite a bit of money, especially at that age and the income I was making. And then each year I wanted to cancel that policy. So I would like set up meetings with the advisor and explain my thoughts around it. Like, I don't understand it, or I think I want to cancel. And he would always convince me to keep
Hmm.
it. Like he was a great salesman. And he makes the most money from my understanding in the first year of me having the policy. I think the bulk of it goes to him like as commission or something. And the investment itself is life insurance and long-term care. And apparently there's like a fixed rate that you're also earning that it counts as the investment and you can pull from it later. But I still never understood it. But he explained it so he sold it so much each time that I wanted to cancel it that I was like, okay, I'll just keep it. And then probably 6 years later, I finally was like, no, I'm going to cancel it. And I lost all of the money that I put into it. So at that point, it was about $7,000. I think I could have broken even if I kept contributing to it for like another 8 years or something, like 15 years total, something along those lines and I would get back my 16K or something that I put into it. But I was like, no, I will take the loss. I would prefer to just invest on my own into things that I actually understand. I don't need a life insurance policy. My sister doesn't need 500K if I were to die. So I just canceled it. And I didn't even tell him I was doing that. I spoke to somebody else, canceled
Mm.
the policy, lost all the money. So hard pill to swallow, but I'm glad overall that I ended up canceling it.
Yeah. And if you had waited till they would give you the full payout, I mean, well, the return your money that you had paid,
Hmm.
was it invested or anything, or just would have been the exact amount?
I couldn't tell you. From my understanding, it was invested. I had these like detailed sheets that broke down how the money would grow each year that I had it, each year that I would contribute, but I couldn't tell you. I don't
Yeah.
understand it still to this day. And that's like I'm a firm believer of that approach to investing. Even like I don't have crypto. I used to have crypto because I don't completely understand how crypto works, you know? So I'm not going to invest into that. I understand I could learn about it, but I prefer to do things that I know and understand. So that's why Roth IRA, total stock market, S&P 500, you know, I understand those things
Yeah.
versus all those other things. So, yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. Like it's just
Yeah.
terrible. Like it's terrible advice to do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, my dad didn't, I don't blame my dad. It
yeah,
was not his intention for me to lose money. He thought that was the best thing at the
right.
time.
Because he trusted that advisor,
Yeah,
right?
and well, he still has a life insurance policy. So I think the money would go to like his wife, my stepmom, and then some to us. And then plus there's like long-term care included in there. But for me at 20 years old when I first opened it, yeah. So
Yeah.
and my dad comes to me now for advice. Like I
Oh,
help
that's
him
good.
with contributing to his IRA and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. That financial stuff seems so overwhelming, but like
hmm
you're saying, like those basics of a Roth IRA, um, the S&P 500, all that kind of stuff is not that like once you learn, like it's not that hard to learn,
hmm
and it's very easy to just set it,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah, and you're gonna see growth, like at least with time. But
Yeah.
with something like what I was putting money into, I don't know. Like if I were to put money into just a Roth IRA for 6 years, I would have seen growth versus me putting money into the life insurance policy for 6 years and I lost all of that money because of the way it's formatted. So
I think this is a obvious question considering what you just said, but is that what you wish you had done instead?
yeah, definitely. Can you I mean, I was putting in 100 plus per month. At some point, I called and asked if I could contribute less. It was like I think the lowest I could go was 90 per month,
Yeah.
but that's still quite a bit. And if I was putting that towards something else, I would be a lot further along.
And you'd still have that money.
hmm Yep, it would be growing. Damn life insurance people. I honestly, if maybe I shouldn't even go here, but when people are in that market, like they sell life insurance, I'm like, oh, I just I think life insurance is good for some people. Term life insurance specifically,
Hmm.
it's a much lower monthly payment. It shouldn't be like hundreds of dollars per month. My sister also opened a policy, and hers was like way more money than on a monthly basis than I was putting in. She also closed and also lost a lot of money. Um, but yeah, there's different ways to go about doing it. So whenever I meet somebody who like works at that company that I had the policy with, I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, I don't trust you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes me really sad. Like it feels like they're taking advantage of people who don't know what to do. And I
Yeah.
was that person and some kind of still am for like many years.
Yeah.
And like people who are trying like, okay, how do I get my financial life going? Take
hmm
advantage of the fact that they don't know what to do and
Yep.
they make it as complicated as possible so that you can't figure it out. And then they like do this thing where you've already put this much money in it, you might as well stick with it.
Exactly.
And it's just manipulation.
Yeah.
Boo.
Seriously. And that's the thing too, is like every year I wanted to close it. And I like had I closed it 3 years earlier, I would have, not lost as much money. But each time he would convince me. And yeah, it was,
Yeah, it's not good.
yeah. What's your second mistake?
Um, I think I'll call it
hmm
the treating credit cards like available money.
hmm
Um, I remember when I got my very first credit card, it was like a $300 Capital One thing. It's probably 1995 or something. And
hmm
the minute I got it in the mail, I was like, "Oh, great! I have $300," and I spent it like that day.
Hmm.
Wasn't that day. I think I even took cash out. I think I did a cash advance. And
Wow.
it all goes back to that whole chaos I had just in general in my life because I didn't have a foundation of how to handle money.
Hmm.
But I'm sure the day it came, I was like, oh, great. Now I can buy cigarettes. I still smoked then.
Uh-huh.
And it was probably like, oh, finally, I can get some cigarettes today. And then, oh, I could take cash out with this thing too. Great. And I'll surely, I'll definitely pay this back. And like that credit card, and that was back when you had to mail a check to pay it.
Yeah.
I don't even know what happened to it. I'm sure it got charged off and they just, discounted it because I didn't pay attention to my credit score or anything. And yeah, but I think all the way through, probably till like maybe 5, 6 years ago. I think it's still something I'm challenged with of like, no, you can't just buy stuff.
Hmm.
But before I really was like, any credit card I got, it just pretty quickly got to its limit, and I would start making minimum payments and then trying to figure out, okay, now how am I gonna like pick up the slack from my chaotic financial life?
Hmm.
Um, it took me a long time because I didn't really think about interest, like how much it cost to just have that debt. Um, and yeah, it just really was not, I just didn't think about it.
Hmm.
And it's not, it's kind of like the same kind of mindset. Like, and this is the thing, I don't want to blame credit cards because they're pretty easy to understand. And they don't exactly like put that information about what it costs to like what interest means and
Hmm.
what, because it shows you on the bill, every bill, like it'll take you X amount of
Yeah. Yeah.
months to pay this off if you do only the minimum, and this is how
Hmm.
much more money you'll pay. But it still was just very easy for me to be like, oh yeah, well that's for people who have money that would pay this off.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't even really think about it because I was like, oh well, I'm the kind of person I mean, I didn't even think any of this through, but it just felt like, oh yeah, well, I couldn't pay more than the minimum on this, so well, I guess
Hmm.
that's how it's gonna be. It's terrible, but it's not. I, I don't know. Am I being too easy on credit card companies? I mean, it's straightforward.
Personally, I love credit cards, as you know.
Yeah,
Um, it's kind of like blaming McDonald's for being obese, you know? So I would say no. I don't think credit cards are to blame. There's some if they're hiding things or I think sometimes the fees can be out of control, but they've gotten
yeah,
better at that. I mean, I don't know. Is there something that they could do to educate more on how a credit card works and what that means? Maybe, but the same goes for like student loans and all like just financial education in general in America.
yeah,
Like it's all something that we're missing. And I don't know if there's anybody to blame in particular.
yeah.
It's
I
just the
think,
system.
yeah. The one thing I think about credit cards is the interest rates. Like,
Hmm.
they could make the interest rates lower
That's
so that
true.
people weren't as likely people who make mistakes, such as myself, many, many
Hmm.
times, aren't as likely to get buried.
Hmm.
I mean, people still will get buried, but like, because I started getting credit cards again after my bankruptcy pretty easily, but the interest rates are all around 30%.
Hmm.
And I know not to carry a balance now, but something goes wrong, you're that, what am I going to rabbit hole
Yeah,
happens fast.
that's true. And then
Um,
if you're only making the minimum payment, it's
yeah,
like the interest is gonna basically you're gonna just cover the interest and it just keeps growing. So
yeah.
yeah.
That was the one thing when I started using YNAB. That was the one thing that really lit a fire under me for interest and really made me realize because each month it count like I had to look at my budget and see, oh, I have to cover this expense, whatever it is, $70 of interest on this card.
Hmm.
And it shows up in red. It's like, okay, you made this purchase, even though it's interest,
Yeah.
you have to cover it. And then
Hmm.
if you don't, it becomes more debt. It just made me realize, like, oh my God, this is really. this is adding up. I don't want to see that. I didn't want to make that purchase.
Yeah.
Like it really is the thing that made me kind of like, oh, this is real. Like this isn't just like some percentage thing that's happening somewhere else. This is coming out of my money. Like it's coming out of my future money or my today money.
Hmm.
And I don't have yesterday money. So you got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where people I can't remember what I was thinking when I was using I had credit card debt when I started my debt-free journey, probably 12 to 15K piled up. And I don't know what I would be thinking, but it's like you you feel like you have that money, like you go spend $300 on something and it's like, oh, all I have to pay for the each month is like $50 or not even. It's like that it's a loan, a literally a little loan coming to you. So it just feels like that money's yours, but you got to pay it back. It's
Yeah.
not yours.
But that's the thing. Like the mindset that they provide is like,
Hmm.
oh, the minimum payment on that will only be like $20. So I
Yeah.
can afford $20 a month. Okay, I can buy this. I can afford it.
Hmm. But if you only pay the minimum payments, it's going to take
Yeah.
you like 20, 30 years to pay it off, which is crazy.
But then if you're at the store and you're someone like I have been and am much less like, and that you have been like too, it's like it makes it very easy to, in the split second, like, oh, I have this built-in justification. I'll put it on my credit card. Of course, I'll pay this off.
Hmm.
And you don't. And then you're
Yeah.
trapped. Yeah.
Do you watch Schitt's Creek or have you watched Schitt's Creek?
Yeah, yeah.
You know when David like uses the company credit card or something and he's like, it's a write-off. Do you know that? When
I
he's like
can't remember
working
that
at
scene,
the
but
I'll maybe I can put it as actually we'll probably get a copyright claim and not that it matters, but he like makes all these purchases for the store that he's working at that like bloss what's it called? The blouse barn.
uh,
You know, when he gets that job. So
yeah.
he starts making all these purchases to test the products and he's like, they're a tax write-off. And his dad's like, you don't just write it off. Like you have to pay for it. And I always think of that when I like
Yeah.
when it comes to credit cards and stuff. I love that show. So
That's so good. I binge watched it when I saw
yeah.
it. So sometimes like a year later, I'm like, I can't remember any of that because I watched
Yeah.
all of it so fast.
Oh, I'll watch it over and over again. I think it's
Yeah.
one of my favorite shows. So
It is really good.
yeah. But he was like thinking because it's a business expense, he just doesn't have to pay for it. You just write it off. So it's things like that. I think people do think like they're if you're not educated on credit cards, then it's like, oh, I thought it was just available money. Like you actually have to pay that back. So,
Yeah. It's one of those things. Like I always think back to when I made a video on my channel about how I got into so much tax debt, which I guess
hmm.
is foreshadowing for one of my financial mistakes. But it wasn't logical. Like you can't explain it, how that kind of thing happens. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about in terms of credit cards, I knew that I had to pay it back, but I didn't really just connect with that somehow. It sounds
Right.
so weird, but I wasn't actively deciding like I'm gonna go get in credit card debt now. Like in my mind, I always had some plan, but like, oh, this isn't gonna happen. I'm not the type of person that, even though I thought I was also destined to be broke,
Yeah.
I'm somehow I don't know how to explain it, but that's it. Like sometimes there's not a logical explanation for
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
kind of mistakes.
No. My third mistake, is it my turn? Yes,
I think
yes,
so,
okay.
yeah.
My third mistake was opening a Roth IRA with State Farm, which is an insurance company for anybody who doesn't know. And I did this because I was filing my taxes. Again, I was with my dad while I was filing my taxes. It's the same CPA I go to though. And at the time I was low income. I think I was still in college. So he was like, "Oh, why don't you open a Roth IRA? Can you contribute like $2,000 or 2,500 or something?" And because of it's called the Savers tax credit, and because I was low income, if I was able to contribute to my Roth IRA, I would basically get 50% of that as a tax return. So it would make me a decent amount of money. Typically, you can't write off your Roth IRA, or it's not a tax deduction. So I was like, cool, I can do that. I think I actually I honestly probably had money because of debt. Like I think I had 2,500 or whatever laying around because I took out more in student loan debt. Now that I think back to that,
Oh,
I don't know where the 2,500 came from. It wasn't from my income. So I was investing debt basically. That's a mistake right there. But also my dad, again, unfortunately, told me, okay, go to State Farm, open a Roth IRA with them. So I remember setting the appointment, going there and meeting with the lady, opening that up. It felt so cool. I was like, I'm investing. I opened a Roth IRA. Now I'm really investing instead of the life insurance.
yeah.
But it was with State Farm, and they invested through RBC Wealth Management. And I remember logging into that account and like I couldn't see what I was invested in. I couldn't, I don't think I could contribute either, like keep contributing without giving them a phone call. It was very confusing. Like the user interface was just pretty basic and didn't give much info, at least at the time. I could not figure it out. So I just kind of let that sit there for a few years. And I probably lost quite a bit of money because of that. I mean, I never added more to it. So had I instead had it with Vanguard or Fidelity and in just like the S&P 500, I probably would have seen a lot more growth. So financial wise, I probably lost a couple thousand to a few $1,000s by investing with them. But eventually, it was actually not until 2020 I rolled that or like moved that money from RBC Wealth Management into Vanguard.
Mm,
So yeah, again, my dad did not at the time. I don't think he had a Roth IRA. So I think he just must have seen that somewhere, and
yeah.
I trusted my dad. Not his fault, but I've just really learned to do my own research and make my own financial decisions
Yeah.
with all of that because yeah, listening to people, I really don't like to take advice from financial advice specifically from people I would not switch positions with, Like
Oh, like, yeah,
yeah, it's a good rule of thumb at this point with advice. So,
yeah. State Farm.
State Farm,
I didn't even know you
right?
could do it at State
Me
Farm.
neither. And it wasn't like invested through since it went through RBC Wealth Management, but yeah, like I don't know. Like looking back on that, I'm like, I would never,
Yeah.
I would
But
never
then,
even
like,
think that.
what year was this, do you think?
Probably 2015, 2016, maybe.
I was gonna blame it on lack of internet, but I guess not.
No, I didn't. I
But
just
then,
didn't. I liked finance, like the idea of being rich and, that type of thing, but
yeah,
I wasn't educating myself on those types of things at that point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I have to remind myself that just because I only started looking at financial stuff on the internet recently, that doesn't mean it didn't exist before
Yeah.
I started
Yeah.
looking at it.
It was all
Um,
there.
but it feels so um separate in
Hmm.
so many ways that and I'm so glad that it exists, the internet exists, and
Me
there's so
too.
many like reliable places you can learn about money easily.
Hmm.
Um, so we don't make these mistakes
Yeah.
as much. Should I do
Hmm.
my number three?
Hmm.
It's my taxes. Womp
Big
womp.
one. Wah,
Some of these,
wah.
I mean, it's such an extended mistake too that it feels like that it was just built on so many mistakes. And
Hmm.
again, I feel like it all goes back to my mistake number one of just like, well, I don't know how to do this because I'm just this poor musician guy.
Yeah.
We don't do money stuff. Like, I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
But I think I mean, part of what happens is I never really made decisions about what my career path was going to be. And I just sort of fell into teaching, and suddenly I was, you know, part-time teaching music at a Montessori school in Houston.
Hmm.
And then just by virtue of that fact, I suddenly had all these private piano students that were paying me money, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. I don't have to wait tables." And then I got to the end of the year, it was time to file taxes. I was like, uh, I have no idea what to do. I didn't keep track of any of this.
Hmm.
So I just avoided it. I just didn't do it. Um,
Yeah.
so I had like, mo like a couple years of ignoring it, and then like I think that first year the IRS didn't come for me, but I knew like I was getting increasingly stressed out, and a friend helped me. Her dad was a CPA,
Hmm.
and we were close enough friends that he was willing to like help me file for free.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, for like 2 or 3 years, and I was like petrified. Just like
Hmm.
I didn't keep track of any of this. It's been like 2 years, 3 years. And I remember like he was like very cheerful about it. He's like, we don't have debtor prisons in the United States, so just don't worry. We're
Hmm.
gonna get this filed. And I think I wound up getting a refund somehow that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know how it happened. Maybe not. But because I was ready for like, because the longer you put something like that off, especially that first go round, when I was like zero idea. Um, and it was before. No, there was internet, but like just barely. It's just barely internet existing.
Hmm.
Um, but then I never got on top of it. Like I got that done, and then well, I can't go back to that guy because he did it for free, and I never really figured out how to do it myself, and I didn't keep track. And it was always that thing of like, well, I didn't really decide to ignore it. I just did. I just never
Hmm.
got around to doing the thing I knew I needed to do. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
that happened year after year. I moved. I had a lot of like, there was a time that the IRS seized my bank account because I had moved enough that
Oh,
I wasn't getting their letters. And I mean, there wasn't any money really in it anyway.
yeah.
Um, but then that I had another accountant who sort of helped me, but he was very like shady. And then Phyllis came along when I had a whole nother like this Phyllis, who I worked with probably for 10 years as an accountant, and she's very handholdy and like very good about like, okay, so now you need to do this. And like she would call the IRS for me, all that stuff. But even still, when that time came around, I just sort of just was like, well, this is just how I do tax now.
Hmm.
IRS will let me restart my payment plan every year. So I don't pay current taxes. I just pay these big back tax things. And then we just regroup at the end of the year. They redo the thing. And I wasn't paying attention to the fact that that number was getting bigger and bigger every year because I was making more money. So ultimately, bankruptcy.
Hmm.
That's the answer to like get rid of the old stuff. But I mean, that's a lot of times of making the same mistake, but it's still that thing of like, well, I'm a broke musician. How am I supposed to be able to get caught up on this?
Right.
Um, well, you get caught up. Like you
Yeah.
figure out how to get caught up. But I just didn't think it was possible.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of, like in the celebrity world, even people will do a lot of tax, like intentionally avoid taxes.
Hmm.
I don't think you did that. You were just like confused and like, I'm just going to avoid it. But
Yeah.
I think in that world, they intentionally do that. For me, the IRS scares me. So like, I will pay
Stuff that I'm
y'all.
like, they're
Yeah.
fine.
No, it scares me. Like if they're gonna start, I don't know what. So that was something I was like very diligent about. And now I think trying to find ways to not pay the money, like legally cut back on
Yeah.
taxes however you can. That's like, if I can do that, I will do that. So I can't imagine like how stressed you felt because even when I filed my taxes the other day, I was like watching him type in the numbers, finalize things, and my heart rate increased. Like, what do I owe? What do I owe? What's it gonna be? It's so weird. Like I get nervous about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Because they have like, I guess I don't take this the wrong way. I'm not as scared of the IRS as I used to be.
Mm,
I mean, I have a healthy respect for the fact that I just for myself, you know what? I think that's it. I was really scared of the IRS, but now I'm more afraid of dying in poverty. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And like
Hmm.
staying on top of getting on top of my tax situation.
Yeah.
Like there's only so much the IRS can do. They could do a lot, of course, but
Hmm.
like having pushed the limit for all these years, I kind of know where the limit is.
Hmm.
Um, this isn't to say I'm in any way like cheating on my taxes, but like,
Yeah.
um, I like. pretty much the worst thing that's going to happen to me with the IRS has already happened when they froze my
Yeah.
accounts. Um, yeah, is that the worst thing? Carrying tens of $1,000s of debt kind of sucks also.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not like they're gonna like hang you.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yeah,
yeah, it's just numbers.
yeah. So anyway, that's my number three.
This episode's probably pretty long. I'm gonna try to go through this as quickly as possible. My number four, the biggest one, maybe not finance wise, but emotionally, life-changing wise, co-signing on a car.
Mm,
And this was with a my boyfriend at the time. I'm already getting nervous talking about it because
I
because
forgot
I
it was a
guess
boyfriend for some reason.
what's that?
I forgot it was a boyfriend for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. So we were together for 5 years total. I probably co-signed in the car 2 or 3 years into the relationship. We were together like right out of high school and then 5 years after that. I always kind of brush over that we had like a really bad breakup, but I've never said this on the internet, but he cheated on me. He's like a total sociopath. Um, he was probably cheating on me for like 2 or 3 years of our relationship. He had, this makes me so anxious to talk about. He had a baby. He had a baby in January of 2016. No, 2017. I don't know, one of the years. We were still together. I found out about him having this baby through Instagram. His like
Stop
baby
it.
mama tagged him in a photo or like commented on a photo, and I happened to go to her page. Like he didn't tell me he had a baby or was cheating on me. This was going on for a long time. And he still wanted to be with me was the thing. Like we can make this work, and it was just a crazy shit show.
Stop
When
it.
I when I think back to that time in my life, like it feels like a movie. I can't believe it was even real. Because we had broken up at one point. Like the while his baby mama was pregnant, I did not know, obviously, that she was pregnant. We had broken up, and he was still like repeatedly trying to get back with me, even though this woman was pregnant. And then I found out about the baby. Obviously, that's done. So I never have said that on the internet. Actually, I've never spoken about this. The car was in my name as well, so we had co-signed on this several years before this incident, and that kind of was used, it was like something that could be used against me, you know, like I just wanted to completely drop this dude. I wish I could have done that, but because that car was in my name, I'm like, shit, I still have to communicate with him. I still have to be nice to him, you know, make sure things are are going to be paid for. Otherwise, it's going to affect me, and it ultimately did end up affecting me. He was making payments fine for like the time we were together. He was making payments for the first few months after breaking up, but then he started missing payments. And that was like my lowest point too. I did not have a lot of money. I had my a lot of debt, so I couldn't afford to pay the bill either. Yeah, he missed the payments 3 months in a row, each one going past the like 30 days late. So it was hitting my score each time. And I'm gonna actually talk about credit score in a video upcoming because my score got down to like 520 something. I don't know, because of these missed payments. I had never missed payments in my life. So it really impacted me. And I was getting phone calls like bankruptcy people, or not bankruptcy, collectors and all of these things. And I'm like, this isn't my husband, nothing like that. Like, he's my boyfriend. Like, oh, well, you're on the account, that type of thing. So I tried to just get him to get on top of things, but ultimately ended up taking him to court because I need that shit paid. I had to
Yeah.
pay the attorney. It was a friend, so it was like 750 or something that I paid her for the initial court stuff. And we got into an agreement that he had to pay me on a monthly basis, and then I would make the payment.
Mhm.
So that was all good for about a year, I would say. And then this was just a Toyota Corolla, by the way. So it was like maybe
It wasn't
300.
even like, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe like 300 something dollar car payment. I think it was 298 when if I'm remembering correctly. All was good for about a year. And from my understanding, I was told by my attorney, if he doesn't make the payment, then okay, the car's yours. that was not the case. So he started missing payments, like he did not give me money to pay the car. So they told me I could start garnishing his wages. So I did start garnishing his wages. He filed bankruptcy. So once you file bankruptcy, they can't garnish your wages. So I'm like shit out of luck. Plus, the car is at risk of being repoed because he filed bankruptcy. And I'm like, how do I get the car? It still has money owed on it. It's in my name. I can't garnish his wages. He's not giving me money. And all the while, like this emotional, like he cheated on me. It was really, really
Yeah.
bad. Like it was a very dramatic, like yelling. Police were called at one point because he came to my house, literally throwing fucking rocks at my window. Like it was just a very scary time for me. And I still had to keep in contact with him. So it didn't end up costing me that much money overall. I did have to pay for the rest of the car. I eventually convinced him to come with me to, is it CarMax? Yeah, CarMax
CarMax.
or Carvana, maybe. I don't know. One of those where you can sell your car to them, and we still had to pay like 2,500 or 2,800 or so. That was my whole emergency fund. I completely used that to pay for the car. Um, and even that was like a whole ordeal. This dude is like a toddler. Like he literally is a sociopath. He does not handle things like an adult. He acts like like it was a big scene at the place. Like he ended
Yeah.
up walking out and yelling and blah blah blah. Um, yeah, so I lost maybe $2,800 by having to pay for that. But the biggest thing was like the loss of sleep, the stress, the emotional side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even to this day, like it affects me how I like talking about this makes me super anxious. So just because
That,
it's crazy, it feels like a movie.
yeah. It sounds like a movie.
Yeah. You know the movie The Girl on the Train? Have you seen that?
No.
We watched that together, which is even more sickening, but that's kind of what things were like because in the movie he like the husband convinces the wife that she's the crazy one or
Hmm.
like doing the wrong thing, and that was kind of the same, a different situation, but similar concept. So,
Oh my God.
yeah,
That sucks.
takes
Knowing
the
that
cake
extra
for the
level
worst.
that he had a baby,
Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
that's so fucked up.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many like now looking back, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I was very naive to just whatever was going on. There were a lot of reasons like why that happened or like why I didn't know. It would be a whole different story. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Damn. Damn.
Yeah. And I know the karma caught up to him for sure. And he even like still kept trying to reach out to me like I'm so sorry, I think about it all. It's just disgusting. Nasty man, nasty, nasty person. And as soon as the car was paid for, I was like number blocked. He kept trying to text me, never responded to him again. I was like, oh, such a
Thank.
relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. That's so awful.
Yes.
I feel like any number four I have is gonna be just pitiful. Compared.
No, I mean that takes the cake for me. Like that
Yeah.
was, yeah, but I obviously there's worse things that could be there, but that was like huge in my life and shaped a lot of like I will never co-sign on something like that again unless I'm married, and even that like that scares me. So
Mm. Ooh, that just sucks.
yes.
Should I do my number four?
Yeah.
So many, this is another like I don't think philosophical is the right word, but like another like psychological thing.
Hmm.
Um, because any of my big mistakes cost other people money, not
Mm.
me. Like, and I feel like also like this made me realize I used to always joke about like, oh yeah, I don't have much debt. I'm not in much debt because I always screw up my credit the minute it gets good. That
Hmm.
was kind of a joke to me, even though like it's not funny. But I would say that to people. Like now that like I know more about all that stuff, I was like, why was I saying that? Like it's a very just a weird thing to be like, oh yeah, yeah, I don't even have credit cards because, I just screw it up so fast.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess that I don't have really big financial mistakes 'cause I never had enough money or credit to be able to make a big mistake.
Hmm.
Um, except for what is $70,000 of tax debt. I guess that is a mistake. But that again, that's just a thing of like a continued ignoring of something. But anyway,
Yeah.
my number four is not knowing that I could try again if I made a mistake with my finances. Because I tried to budget for a long time. And then one thing would happen. I'm like, oh, I overspent. Oh, well, I guess, see, this just proves it. I don't have what it takes to have a healthy financial life. I'm just not that kind of
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
Just not, and maybe this is the reverse of what I feel like is the biggest lesson I've learned about keeping track of finances is that like you can always make a new decision. Like if something goes wrong, um, you overspend, something comes up you didn't expect, you just okay, so now I'm changing my budget and gonna fix it.
Hmm.
When before I would just like throw up my hands and be like, oh well, I guess I'm just gonna try to figure this out as I go, like I did
Yeah.
before. But I mean that was one of those ongoing mistakes of just not sticking to it, not recovering from mistakes, choosing to
Hmm.
just let them just spiral.
Yep. That reminds me of I saw this like TikTok or Reel, whatever. It was on Facebook, I saw it, I think, or YouTube. Um, this woman like did all these, she had like poured some milk and a little bit spilled. So then
Uh-huh.
she's like, oh, just pour the rest of it. Or like dropped something, like dropped a sock from the laundry pile and then just dump the rest of it. It's like that, where it's like
Yeah,
just because you do one thing, it's not like everything needs to be messed up. Now you don't have to keep doing it. So I think she was using it to tie in mistakes with fitness, but it's the same thing. Fitness and finances are very similar.
yeah.
Like just because you mess up, you don't have to keep messing up. There's a way to kind of recoup.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a TikTok video. It always comes back to a TikTok video with
I
us.
know it does for us.
You may have seen this. Like there's a little kid like holding a cup of coffee or something to take into his mom, and you hear the
Hmm.
mom filming like, "Okay, yeah, keep going. Okay, yeah, you got it. Okay, here comes the door. Like what? Be careful, stop." And then a little spills, and
Hmm.
the kid and she's like, "Oh, it's okay. You just keep on coming." And a little more spill, and he just threw it on the ground.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
And the mom was like, "Did you give up?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Oh.
But it's the same thing, right? Of like,
Yep.
well, okay, I spilled this twice. I can't. I'm done with this.
Hmm.
Um, it's hard not to do that for some of
Yeah.
us. Maybe for all of us. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
But,
Well, I think it's kind of like once you mess up, you it's okay to keep messing up, so you give that
yeah,
excuse to yourself and then it just yeah, it's a cycle.
yeah.
So,
I guess that like when you think of it that way, and I think that's what like the whole idea of budgeting for me was
hmm.
so scary, and like to me it was about limiting and like even putting money in a savings account made me feel like, but that's my money. Like I felt like I was not getting to spend my money like I wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it was that like that kid. I like the couple mistakes would happen, and then be like, oh, thank God, I fucked this up, and now I don't have to do this random thing,
Mm,
this thing I
that's
don't
so
want to do
interesting.
anyway.
Yeah.
So here's my excuse. Now I get to go back to doing what I want.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, a lot of psychology around that for sure.
Yeah, there's so much psychology around money stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we made it through our lists.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I haven't made any financial mistakes recently. Like I'm pretty trying to think. Yeah, I don't know that it'll keep coming up for me. Hopefully not. Now I know better, I suppose, to do the research, to not make decisions that I made before. And yeah, I think I'm good now, which is nice to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously there's like small things I do go over budget, that like those things happen, but I wouldn't even count that as a mistake. It's just like, oh, it happened type of thing.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a month, as you know, of overspending a couple months ago.
Hmm.
Um, that feels like a mistake at this point. Like when I'm now that I'm in the middle of like, okay, wrong way, wrong direction. And I
Yeah.
think it is, I mean, that's the growth. That's where I can look at it and be like, okay, so I'm not giving up. I didn't
Hmm.
touch any of my savings to recover from this. Those are gigantic changes.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still in a pretty urgent situation with getting money saved. So it's not ideal in any way, but like, okay, so we got to keep going.
Hmm.
Um, so I think those mistakes will get smaller and less frequent.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but yeah, they're still coming up.
Yeah. Well, those of you watching or listening, if you want to share your biggest financial mistakes, that would be interesting to see. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we should do a live.
we should do a live.
That would be
Let
really
us
fun.
know. Yeah,
Yeah. Do we have anything else? I think that's it.
I think that's it.
Like, subscribe, all that
All
stuff.
the
Comment.
things. Hmm. Thank you for being here,
Yeah.
and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.